Speaker is Robin Edgar. He will be talking about Dutch pandemic software and building a FOSS ecosystem for all.
Hi. Well, thank you for coming. First of all, as you see, the title is no longer Dutch pandemic software, and that is because I work at a large client, and the large client who does a lot of open working and believes in an open culture told me about 1.5 weeks ago that they didn't want me to present this. So I'm not going to present about Dutch pandemic software, unfortunately, but I will be talking about what the main focus of the talk was, and that was how do you open source a large, complex project. So that's why maybe this is a different title from the one that you read about a week or two ago. But here we are. First of all, I would like to say thank you for having me, and I'm really glad that you guys all made the effort to come. Apparently this is the largest amount of attendees DORS CLUC has ever had, which is awesome. The volunteers here do an excellent job, they work hard, so this is an extra thank you for those guys. There's one of them, thank you. Thank you very much. Who am I? Well, my name is quite obvious. By training, I'm a psychologist, but I've spent years and years and years doing IT. Actually, I started programming when I was about 8. I wasn't particularly good at it, so I ended up doing more sort of Linux type stuff and getting into project management. And the best thing about my job now is it keeps changing title. So where I started as a consultant, then it became a business operations manager, and now I'm a transition manager. In this role that I'm at, I'm a program manager, senior, which is quite nice. You can see the hair is going gray. So you get that. I used to have a company about 14 years long, where I did web-based software development and digital out-of-home, so like the big screens you see everywhere now. I sold that in 2014. And also, I like flying airplanes, as you can see. And as you can also see, I live in Finland. I moved there in June last year. And I'm really fortunate that I can actually work remote. So I have a big customer in the Netherlands who I visit every 3 weeks. And there's a kick-ass development team there. It's really one of the most bizarre teams I've ever had to work with. They come from all walks of life. They're hackers and very interesting personalities who are absolutely not afraid of speaking their mind. And the Dutch people are pretty direct. This is taking directness to a whole new level. It's wonderful working with them. So thank you to them. Also, some of them are wandering around Zagreb now. They decided museums would be nice, but I know they're listening, so hi to you also. So anyway, I need an example of a complex open source project. So, you know, let's just imagine that we have like this huge social network, and you want to have a mobile app, and you want to have these people who are connected to your social network. You want to give them access to your facilities, any facilities. So you say, what are we going to do? We're going to make an app for that. The first thing you do is you say, well, so how are we going to get them to have access? Well, you know, if you just sort of have a name and then have someone hold a passport and wave that about, that's not very easy, not very quick to do. So what you decide to do is you might want to encode the information, you know, like in a code. So it's easily scannable from an external party, and you know you might want to do that in a barcode. So you know now you've got a theory, you've got an idea, you can show this barcode, and you start going, all right, let's turn it into an actual working infrastructure. So you know you need scanners, and the scanners probably some software so that it's easy to do, because nowadays every mobile phone is a scanner really. And you might want to have it in as many ecosystems as possible. So unfortunately, Windows Mobile, no. but iOS and Android, yeah. You need there on the side, there's a code generator kind of system which, you know, encodes your data. And then You go, oh yeah, it's nice, but you need a back end, so you need to be able to fill in your customers, your social network members, and you need to be able to store them somehow so that they get thrown to the barcode. And you know, say this network of yours really starts taking off, and it becomes really interesting. And suddenly, before you know it, you have other parties who are also saying, "Dude, I want to add my members to your social network." And then you say, "Oh, well, that's really cool. I'll let you do that." And then maybe up there's some of the members of your social network. They're quite difficult to get into, you know. So you need to build exception routes. Which are not directly connected to the database, because maybe some, you know, users don't want to be in your database, and it's Europe, you have a right to opt out. So you use exception routes to generate their barcodes, and maybe some people just old or otherwise indisposed, so they might want to have printed barcodes so that, you know, you can rock up to the scanner at the door and they can show you, you can show a printout. So they have to get information. So, you know, it's starting to become a bit of a complex infrastructure, and you can understand that this is not one repository you're going to open source, right? This is going to be quite a few repositories doing quite a few different things. So now we have a bit of a complex setup, which is totally fictitious and made up. But the talk I'm going to give is not only valid for this kind of complexity. It's also valid for if you only have one repository and you want to turn it maybe into a business, you want other people working with it. It's not just your pet little project, it's a bit bigger than that. So what do you have to actually do? Well, here's a big list, and I will be going through the big list. And it's an important list, and a lot of people, they think, oh yeah, you know, I can just throw the thing public. Well, generally it's not a good idea, and if you look through the list you can kind of see why not, because if you think about it, most of these steps make sense. But they're quite tough to do, some of them, and some of them cost money, so you have to kind of consider why are you doing this, which of these risks are you willing to skip? And which of these do you really want to take? So, once we've recovered from reading a long list of stuff with lots of weird terms that generally programmers don't have too much to do with, I thought I'd give you guys a rest. And usually I have a picture of a frog here, but you know, because I'm with this team of people with cats, I thought I'd make it a cat. So everybody chill out, relax, it's all going to be easy. So let's start by, what reasons are there to open source? Well, one, it's a really good idea. We all know that, and I'm preaching to the choir here, right? So I don't really need to get into this, but it's a good idea to think about, why are you open sourcing this project? How much of it do you want to open source? And what exactly, you know, just have a good idea of why you've chosen this route. And once you've said, yeah, I've got a good reason, I know why I want to do this, you need to start thinking about the risk that can result as a software of your software going open source. So, you know, it might be that you're a really bad programmer and people sort of start looking at your code and go, I'm not touching this with a stick. You know, it needs to be put down neatly. And if you don't do that, then your reputation suffers. It could be that the type of software you've put out requires some sort of guarantee that you will continue to support it, because maybe it's really specialized. So for example, there are some languages like Go, Erlang. They're fantastic, they're fun, but you try finding a developer for them. You know, so if you want to put out something in Erlang, then it's probably a good idea that you can find a way to give a warranty on being able to support the code. And not just dumping it somewhere and saying, see ya, good luck. Then you have the dependency story, and that's becoming bigger and bigger nowadays. And you see some people, they just get upset and they just pull their whole their whole software stack from GitHub, and then whoop, you know, or you require a very specific version of OpenSSL, which hasn't been used in 8 years for some reason. I've seen it. And it's no longer downloadable, so, you know, think about that. Also make sure that you're not breaching someone else's intellectual property, because people can get quite upset about that, strangely enough. And that doesn't just mean you may be breaching an idea from a big commercial company. It can also mean that you're taking code from another open source repository without attribution, which is generally the CC BY type licenses. They say, yeah, you can take, but give me an attribution. Say, look, it's me. This is where you got it from. Yeah, and it could be that your code is insecure. All right, that's a problem, so people can't run it, and people will hopefully find out, although it can sometimes take years, like the OpenSSL bug insecurity, which, which kind of took a long time. And do you meet standards? If you want to throw stuff big companies want to use, there's loads of different coding standards out there, but also social standards, like, is it accessible? Can blind people read the output of your software? It's a thing, and for blind people it's a problem if it isn't, and for people who are catering to blind people it's very, very important. Alright, so let's talk about the commits you've done while you were working in this private repository. Yeah, sometimes the commit will look a bit like, oh my fucking god, what the fuck is this? Yeah, please fix now. Sometimes it'll look, oh fuck, that dickhead, that asshole, he did it all wrong, now I have to fix it. This is frustrated programmers talking. This is quite possible. But do you really want these things to go public? Some of the bugs might be so incredibly stupid, so it doesn't have to be rude, or it just might be that someone was working really late and did a really strange commit, and it doesn't work at all, and someone else found out, and it's just a high severity, really stupid mistake. Do you want that commit to be that public? So you need to think about, what are we going to do with these commits? Are we going to move them, sync them to the public repository, or are we going to just flatten the earlier pull requests and just throw in change logs or something like that? It's something you need to think about. Yeah, they can also contain sensitive information, but you read that, I guess. Documentation is always an interesting one, because no one likes to do it, but does need to be done. And the most important thing is making it easy for other people to install your stuff. Yeah, if you have this wonderful plan and it has all these dependencies and you think it should be on virtual machines, and you forget that you're using a non-standard port, and you don't tell anyone that it's on a non-standard port, yeah, they're going to have real difficulties installing it, and then they're just going to give up and say, nah, this is nonsense, don't want it. Code documentation, I recently had a really interesting discussion with somebody who said, well, I think really good code doesn't need documentation because it should be so readable. And I sat there going, well, I think that's a really good theory, but in practice, this is not ever actually going to happen. It would be lovely if it did, but no. And so you need something about coding standards in there as well. How do we approach problems? How do we go about things? And it can be very broad and sweeping, but it could also be really very simple things like, I use 3 spaces, or I use a tab as an indent. Yeah, you have no idea. And because it's a big project, you need to think about other kind of stuff. So what happened in the development? What kind of code of conduct? You don't need all of it, but they're good ideas. Yeah, so it's really nice, especially if it's a bit complex, to have a picture of your architecture. Yeah, it's not very hard to do. You can do it for free nowadays using Draw.io. It used to be you had to be either PowerPoint crazy, or you had to use a Microsoft product. But Draw.io, fantastic, very easy to do. And it's nice if you have some sort of risk assessment. And there's loads and loads of different methodologies which explain the decisions you've made. And there's a term here, I don't know, DPIA, Digital Privacy Impact Assessment. If you're working with personal data, such as in a fictitious made-up social network example, it's a really good idea to have thought about what are the implications of handling personal data? Are you allowed to do that? Is this compliant with law, for example? And there are many laws. You've got EU law, and you've got national law to consider. They could be a bit different, and some will give you a bit more latitude than the other. But nowadays, people really take notice when you're handling personal information. Now, you've got your beautiful structure, it's all wonderful, and you think, let's go public. No, please let someone else look at your code. You know, even if it's really stupid stuff like the OWASP top 10, at least you can say, look, I've had a good idea, I've had someone have a good look at it. And there's companies that will do this. They can do it with automated tools. They can monitor changes, etc. Or you can just get your neighbor and say, hey man, you know, thank you very much, but could you please have a quick look, just to make sure that all the really weird stuff is out there and it looks presentable, it's secure, and it's documented. So now you've got your reviewed, beautiful structure, you've got rid of all the weird issues and that kind of stuff, it's very presentable. And then we go actually kind of back to step one, and that was, why are you doing it? Because why you're doing it, why you're open sourcing this project, has a lot to do with what will you say about it. You know, if you have a reason, then you also have a request. You can easily say, you know, what do I want from the community? Maybe you just say, no, I'm just leaving it out there because I like open source and I think everything should be open source. But you could also say, yeah, there's some things which I'd like to do, my backlog is too large, and it may be nice if the community can pick that up. You know, so then you can very specifically have that as a reason and communicate that. One of the talks I was listening to yesterday, someone piped up and said, hey, this is a cool project, I do microservices, how can I help? And he got an answer saying, well, you can help on translations. You know, but it's obvious that the person giving the answer hadn't really thought about how did he want to handle the community input. And if someone says, I can do microservices, then you can sort of, I think, you know, you can customize the request to the kind of skills that people have. And then, yeah, you have community. What is community? If you're a very big company, then you might want to have a community manager. You need to think of things like, how fast am I going to respond? If someone puts an issue up, you're going to sit there going, never. It's a valid answer, but not a very good one. Or you're going to say, I'm really into it. I'm not going to let anything go longer than 48 hours. So that will definitely activate your community. So anyway, you've done all of this. You're ready, your communication, you can finally go live. So you create your repository, you sync everything. You make sure there's some branch protection on it so that not everyone can just commit. And you know, with bigger projects, obviously what usually happens is there's the 4 eyes principle. So someone makes a commit, someone has a look, and it's not just code quality, it's also code sanity. Is this a feature we really want in our system? And once you've configured your repository, with the help of some really good ops guys, hopefully, like, you know, Nick here, we can open it and we can monitor it. So it's more involved than just saying, let's just chuck it out there and hope stuff happens. But I hope you understand that the steps are quite logical. So, do you guys have any questions? I left 4 minutes for questions, so I'm expecting something. Do you guys think it's a really too complicated process if you see this?
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed about handling an open source project is when you do get the contributions, they are very often not up to the standard you would like to have for your code for project.
Yeah.
So how do you handle when like something that you could give less than quality the code to sort of attempt to work it into the through a process, work it to get it merged, or you refuse it, or
What do you? So the question is a bit: what do you do with enthusiastic volunteers who who want to contribute but maybe can't contribute at the level that they'd want to? And I think that's the way you kind of approach it. You say, "Thank you very much for contributing. Unfortunately, we cannot accept this. Now you can here you have a decision. depending on the severity of the issue they've solved, right? You can say, this is important, at least it's a start, and then I get my own developer to clean it up. Or you can say, thank you, it's really nice of you. No thank you, but I have something that maybe suits your skill level a bit more, and you can hopefully maybe get them involved that way and train them up. Yeah. So should you have low-hanging fruit for contributors to reach up to? Yeah, I think in any project there's always low-hanging fruit. In the example I just gave, it's the translations. That's always low-hanging fruit. But there's always things that, backlogs get big and they get huge. And some of the things you say, yeah, actually I should do that, but the time required to switch to that task, spend half an hour to code, and then switch to another task is too long, right? You don't want to spend an hour doing something that takes half an hour, which the severity isn't that big. So that's the kind of stuff that you can very easily move on to enthusiastic community members. Yeah. If you don't get any contributors, does it mean you suck? Well, it depends on how you've configured everything. It could be that you've just said, no, I don't want any contributors. And I think generally, if you don't get anyone looking at your project, then it's a marketing question. Then you haven't communicated properly what your project is, why you're doing it, and how you can contribute, and that you want contributions. That's quite tough to do, because it requires a different skill set than programming. But my experience is I've seen some really weird projects, and there's always someone out there who's interested in what it is that you're doing. It's hardly ever the case that you are the only person ever to be fixing that specific problem. So you're just not reaching these people. It's searchability, maybe you're using completely weird words to describe your project, and someone else is looking for your project but using different terms. That's a possibility as well. Okay, well, it's my time, I think, and the next one can start on time. Thank you guys so much for listening. And hopefully see you next year. Thank you. That's not nice.